What if everything you were taught about human history is a carefully curated lie, not a conspiracy of men in dark rooms, but something older, something buried? Around the world, ancient civilizations built monuments so precise, so mathematically perfect, that modern engineers still struggle to replicate them. And yet, we're told these people were primitive, superstitious, simple. But what if they weren't? What if they knew something about the universe, about time, about energy, about ourselves, that we, the advanced ones, have completely forgotten? What if the true story of humanity isn't one of slow progress, but of forgetting? Look closely at the ruins we call primitive. The pyramids of Giza align with true north more accurately than most modern buildings. Stonehenge tracks solstices with mathematical precision. Thousands of miles away in the jungles of Cambodia, Angkor Wat mirrors the constellation Draco. These civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries, without satellites, without telescopes, without contact, somehow encoded the same cosmic knowledge into stone. Coincidence? Or memory of something older? A shared origin point in human history that predates every timeline we've been given. Every culture, on every continent, tells the same story. A great flood. A world destroyed by water and fire. Survivors who rebuild civilization from nothing. The Sumerians called it the Deluge of Utnapishtim. The Hebrews called it Noah's flood. The Hindus called it Manu's flood. The Maya, the Aboriginal Australians, the Norse, all describe the same catastrophe. Historians call this coincidence, cultural cross-contamination, shared fear of storms. But what if it's not myth at all? What if it's memory, passed down orally for thousands of years, describing a real global cataclysm that erased almost everything? In 1901, divers found a strange device in a shipwreck off the coast of Antikythera, Greece. Corroded gears, dials, inscriptions. It took a century to understand what it was. A mechanical computer capable of predicting eclipses and planetary positions built over 2,000 years ago. Nothing like it appears again for over 1,000 years. It shouldn't exist. And yet it does. What if this wasn't an isolated invention, but a fragment of a much larger, much older body of knowledge, most of which never survivived? Go back further. Göbekli Tepe, in modern-day Turkey, predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years. Predates the pyramids by 7,000. It was built before agriculture, before writing, before the wheel, according to the official timeline. And yet its megalithic pillars are covered in sophisticated carvings of animals, symbols, and what some believe are astronomical records. This site alone rewrites the entire narrative of civilization's birth. If organized, symbolic, monumental construction existed this early, what else are we wrong about? Here's the uncomfortable question historians avoid. Why does human civilization seem to begin abruptly, already advanced? Sumer appears with writing, law, mathematics, astronomy, fully formed, with no primitive precursor. Egypt's earliest pyramids are its most precisely built. There's no clumsy first draft, no trial and error. It's as if these civilizations didn't invent this knowledge, they remembered it, inherited it. From somewhere or someone, they remembered it. From somewhere or someone that came before. Plato wrote of Atlantis not as fantasy, but as historical record, passed to him through Egyptian priests, who claimed it came from records 9,000 years older than his own time. A civilization advanced, powerful, and ultimately destroyed in a single catastrophic day and night. For centuries, we dismissed it as allegory. But what if Plato wasn't inventing a warning, but transmitting a memory of a civilization that reached remarkable heights and vanished so completely that reached remarkable heights and vanished so completely that only fragments survived in myth? Around 12,800 years ago, something catastrophic happened to Earth. Geological evidence shows a sudden, dramatic climate shift. The Younger Dryas. Ice cores show soot, melted glass, and platinum spikes consistent with a massive impact event. Entire species went extinct almost overnight. Human population collapsed. And directly after this event, something strange happens in the archaeological record. Göbekli Tepe appears. As if survivors of something catastrophic gathered to preserve what they still remembered. Encoding it into stone before it, too, could be lost. Every culture also whispers of teachers, strange figures who arrive after the catastrophe to give humanity knowledge again. The Sumerians called them the Apkallu. The Egyptians spoke of Thoth. The Maya described Kukulkan. Each myth describes beings who taught agriculture, astronomy, writing, and law to shattered survivors. Different names, same story. What if these gods weren't gods at all, but the last survivors of the world before, trying desperately to make sure knowledge wouldn't die with them, So why don't we know this? Why isn't this taught as fact instead of fringe theory? Because history, as we're taught it, is built on academic frameworks established centuries ago. Frameworks resistant to revision, protective of consensus, allergic to anomaly. Every inconvenient discovery gets filed as unexplained rather than integrated. Not necessarily because of conspiracy, but because rewriting the story of civilization means admitting we don't actually know where we came from. And maybe that's the real erasure. Not a deliberate cover-up by shadowy elites, but something quieter. Time itself erasing memory. Oral traditions decaying into myth. Myth decaying into fairy tale. Fairy tale decaying into primitive superstition. Each generation trusting the last less. Until finally, we call our own ancestors fools, forgetting that they built things we still can't fully explain. So what did they know? Perhaps it wasn't advanced technology in the way we imagine. No hidden machines, no alien blueprints. Perhaps it was something more fundamental, an understanding of cycles. That civilizations rise, reach a peak, and fall. Not gradually, but suddenly, violently, completely. And that the only thing that survives isn't stone or steel, but story, carved into rock, whispered through generations, encoded into myth so it might survive long enough for someone someday, into myth so it might survive long enough for someone someday. So ask yourself, if a civilization as advanced as ours could vanish, buried beneath sand in centuries, what would survive of us? Our servers would fail. Our cities would crumble. Perhaps in 10,000 years, someone will stand before the ruins of our own monuments, insisting we were primitive too. And somewhere, in a story they don't yet understand, a warning we left behind will be waiting for someone finally ready to listen.